Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to add some interactivity to our projects using buttons and signals. So to give you an idea of where we're going, let me show you an example of the completed project. So I'm going to go ahead and play this and go up to full screen. And so you could see here I have, again, a very simple layout with kind of a header node, and there's some text up here at the top that says there are 0 llamas, and then I have a button labeled add a llama, and then I have another button that's disabled that says remove a llama. And down here is the body of the project, and there's nothing visible. When I click the add a llama button, we can see that somewhere in the body of our project an animated llama shows up, and the text up at the top of our screen changes. It now reads there is 1 llama. And we also notice that the remove a llama button is now enabled. I can click on it if I want to. If I click add a llama again, there are 2 llamas, there are 3 llamas, there are 4 llamas, so on and so forth. And one by one, I can remove those llamas until there are no more llamas left, which actually disables the remove a llama button. So this is the type of interactivity that we're going to be creating using Godot script. So let's get started. So you can see here I am starting with a very simple project. I have a main node, and main node has a main script. This is just the default placeholder code that Godot gives me. There's nothing special in here. If I switch back over to 2D mode, again, I have a header like before, and I have a label called header text. And then I have a body, which is just a color rectangle down here at the bottom. What I want to do is, just like in the sample project, I want to add some buttons. And so I'm going to add the buttons to header. So I'm going to make sure I'm clicked on that, and I'm going to right click add child. And I'm just going to quickly search on button and double click on button. Now I want to give this button a meaningful name. And so I'm going to right click on that button and click rename, and I am simply going to call it add llama, just like that. And then with that button selected, I'm going to come over to the inspector panel, and I'm going to click on the text, and I'm going to say add a llama, just like that. Now I have a labeled button, and I'm going to move it around, something like that. And now what I want to do, I'm going to duplicate this node, and it's going to automatically add another button here. Of course, they're stacked right on top of each other. But what I want to do is rename this button. I'm going to rename it, and we're going to call this remove llama. And of course, they both have the same text now. So I'm going to come over to the inspector, and it's going to say remove a llama. Now, because the text label on each of these buttons is different, the size of the buttons is different. And so I am going to just manually adjust the rectangles so that they are 150 pixels wide and 30 pixels tall. And I'm going to do that to both of those buttons. So 150 pixels wide, oops, and then coming down and 30 pixels tall. And then I'm just going to I've already got some guides in place here. I'm just going to position these something like that. And I want them to be at about a Y of 60. That way they're at the same height. And this is just aesthetics. And very good. So if I save my project now and run it, I should see I have 2 buttons here. Of course, they don't do anything, but there are buttons visible in my project. All right, so now, of course, we want these buttons to actually do something. So what we're going to do is actually write some code to make these buttons do something. Now, Godot makes it very easy for us to add code to buttons. So watch what's going to happen. So I'm going to click the add a llama button. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch from the inspector panel to the node panel. And I'm going to make sure I'm on the signals tab instead of groups. I'm on the Signals tab, and essentially what I want Godot to do, I want it to do something when this button is pressed. And so I am going to double click the pressed signal. I'm going to double click that, and Godot is going to ask me, oh, you want to connect a signal to a method. Method is another name for function. And I'm going to say, yes, I want all my code right now to be in the main script. And so it's saying here, it's going to write some code for me. So take a look at what it did. I have my placeholder code here, but Godot said, oh, I'm going to create a function for you. And that function is going to occur anytime somebody presses the Add Llama button. Now let's do that same thing. Let's come back to main, click on the Remove a Llama button, and make sure again I'm on the Signals tab, and I'm going to double click on Pressed, and I'm going to make sure main is selected, and I'm going to click Connect. And when I do that, I get brought over to my code, and I could see I now have my own functions, an on Add Llama Pressed function and an on Remove Llama Pressed function. Of course, these functions don't do anything. We can see the keyword pass in each of these. I'm going to remove some of this placeholder code that we don't need just to keep things nice and simple. Let's go ahead and add some functionality to the on Add Llama Pressed function. Now, we know that what we want to do is instantiate an instance of our llama scene. And we learned how to do that last week. So let's just say var, I'm going to call this L just to keep it L for llama. And I am going to say, Godot, I want you to load a resource. And the resource I want you to load is the llama scene. And after you load that, I want you to create an instance of the llama scene. And then importantly, I am going to say I want this llama to have a position. And I want the position of the X value of my new llama to be, rather than hard coding in a value, I am going to use a built-in function called random range. And random range takes two parameters. I need to give it two numbers. I want it to be between 0 and the width of my screen, which is about 1024. And then I want to say, I'm going to do the same thing for the Y value, random range, get a random number between 0 and 500. And then I want my llama animation to play. So I'm going to say L.playing equals true. And then what I'm going to do is I want to add this llama, not to main, but to the body color rectangle. I'm going to add it as a child to body. And so the way that I do that is I put $, and I can see the code hinting is showing me all the things that I can use here. I want to write some code related to body. So I'm going to say body, and then I'm going to say add child, and the child that I want to add is L. So let's save my code and let's run it. And let's see what happens when I click Add Llama. Bingo. I can see that Add Llama has shown up here. Excellent. And if I click it again, I should get another llama in another random position. Now, one thing that we have to keep in mind is we don't want our llamas to actually go off the screen. And so I know that the llamas are about 48 by 48 pixels wide. So I am actually going to limit where this can show up. I'm going to subtract about, I'm going to say 975, and I don't want it to go too far down. So I'm going to make this around 450. That way I know they're going to stay in the body box. I don't want it to accidentally go outside of the viewport or the viewable area. And that's how you add a button to add a new scene to the scene tree.